Hey guys, it's JC Theater Yu-Gi-Oh! Here today, and I'm coming at you with my Onomatopoeia deck profile for you guys. Now, quick backstory, the lead character in Yu-Gi-Oh! Zexal used a series of monsters with very hard to pronounce names, and they all had their own archetype, but they all ended up getting support that mixed all four archetypes together. Those four archetypes are Gagaga, Zubaba, Dododo, and Gagaga. I know it's confusing, but luckily for the fact of synergy when it comes to all four of those archetypes together, I find Dododo and Gagaga to be the two archetypes that kind of mesh the best together when you incorporate the more generic support that all four archetypes have together. So we won't see any Gagaga or Zubaba cards specifically in this deck, except for the few that well, you'll see when we get to them, that kind of share names with other ones of the archetype as well. So technically, this is just a Gagaga / Dododo deck profile for you. I've spoken long enough about these confusing names. Let's just get into the deck profile itself. So first up, we're going to go over the Gagaga monsters, which we're going to show off 3 Gagaga Magician. The first of the Gagaga monsters revealed in the anime, and he has an effect where you can select a level of 1 through 8 and declare it, and he becomes that level. So he can kind of be able to be manipulated to different levels to kind of go into different Xyz. He, honestly, the fact that he comes in ulti and the fact that he's the Gagaga monster is why I run 3 copies of him in this deck. His level modulation works actually pretty well with the next card we're going to go over, but other than that, it doesn't really affect anything since he's already level 4, and this deck is based around being a level 4 toolbox. So like I said, the card he works pretty well with is the 3 copies of Gagaga Sister that we have here. So when Gagaga Sister's normal summon, you can add 1 Gagaga spell or trap from your deck to your hand. And also when she's on the field, you can target another Gagaga monster you control, and then her, as well as that targeted Gagaga monster, become the combined levels of each other. So for instance, which I'll get to in the extra deck, spoiler alert, I play some rank 10s because you can select Gagaga to be level 8, and then have Gagaga Sister, since she's level 2, they both become level 10, and then you can go into a rank 10 Xyz monster. That's the little combo I thought of, which was pretty cool, but like I said, I'll show you what I do with it when we get to the extra deck. Next up, one of the new support, and the reason why this deck actually somewhat functions now, is Zubabancho Gagaga Coat. So Zubaba Bancho Gagaga Coat is a card that mixes both the Zubaba and the Gagaga archetypes together, and if you control either a Zubaba or Gagaga monster except a copy of him, you can special summon him out from your hand, and also when he's on the field, you can special summon out either 1 Gagaga or Dododo monster from your graveyard onto the field. This second effect, actually locks you into only being able to use Xyz summons from the extra deck for the rest of the turn, but because of the new master rule, as well as the other cards in this deck that have that same restriction of locking you into only Xyz summons, doesn't really matter now that we're in a new master rule where link monsters aren't required to bring out Xyz monsters. So that just made this deck, as it's made many other decks, even that much better. And then the last card I play of Gagaga monsters in the main deck is 1 Gagaga Child. She's basically a free special summon out onto the field if you control a Gagaga monster, and then she copies the level of 1 Gagaga monster on your side of the field. Sadly, if she uses that level copying, you actually have to skip your battle phase, which is why she isn't too good considering the other swarming capabilities of this deck. But I find that Gagaga Child's still pretty decent, a free special summon, and even though this deck definitely focuses on Xyz, since she is a free special summon, she could be used for some link plays if you want to kind of make the deck more routed towards those. Next up, and I lied about that being the last Gagaga monster because we actually have Utopic Onomatopoeia. And this card is always treated as all 4 of those archetypes. So luckily it's not some kind of weird, crazy name. They just kind of wrote it in the card text here in parentheses, where it's always a Zubaba, Gagaga, Gogogo, and Dododo card. And during your main phase, you can special summon up to one each of those 4 archetypes from your hand onto the field in defense position. But then he also has that effect of locking you into just Xyz summons from your extra deck, which doesn't matter in this build in particular. He's definitely a playmaker. The fact that he is 3 copies of a card that satisfies all the needs of any cards in this deck that require a specific one of those archetype is definitely helpful. And you'll see when I get into some of the spells and traps that I chose for this deck that he's kind of integral because he just adds to the name list, as well as his special summoning ability is very, very good. The first of the 3 cards I have for the Dododos are 3 copies of Dododo Witch, which when she's summoned, you can special summon out a Dododo from your hand, which includes, of course, our Utopic Onomatopoeia there. And basically that's it. She's basically like kind of like a Goblinberg or something of that nature, where you just summon her and then bring out another Dododo. And then the other Dododo we have in the main deck, one of the old school ones, is Dododo Buster. He is basically a name in this deck for Witch to bring out, and the reason why I chose him over any of the other Dododos is because he has a Cyber Dragon-like effect where if your opponent controls a monster and you control no monsters, you can special summon him out onto the field, and he actually becomes level 4 if that occurs, which is good considering usually he's level 6. And then the final Dododo monster we have is similar to the last Gagaga card, since it came out in the Legendary Duelist set, and that's Dododo Dwarf Gogogo Glove, which I find to be much easier to say than Gagaga Coat, whatever the rest of the sentence was. So for him, during your main phase, you can special summon 1 Zubaba or Gagaga monster from your hand, and if you control a Gogogo or Dododo monster, except a copy of himself, while he's in your graveyard, you can special summon him out onto the field, but then he's banished when he leaves the field. Which, as you might be aware, if they're used in an Xyz summon, and they become a material, they never technically leave the field, so when he gets detached as a material, he still gets just sent to the graveyard. Again, this card, as well as the Gagaga Coat here, or Zubaba Bancho Gagaga Coat, they are the kind of breath of life that this deck needed. And of course, this card has been out for a little bit before them, but he kind of didn't have anything to really work with. So first up for the spell and traps, we have some Gagaga support in 3 Gagaga Wind. This is what you'll be searching off of Gagaga Sister, and this is kind of where the Onomatopoeia deck kind of starts getting hurt a little bit, because they do have some pretty decent cards that are specific for one of the 4 archetypes, but we play 13 copies of Gagaga monsters, and that includes the 3 copies of Onomatopoeia, which is any of them. So we have 13 targets for this card, which basically lets you special summon a Gagaga monster from your hand onto the field, and it becomes level 4. Next up, I play 3 Dododo Draw, and it's the same kind of issue where it can only target Dododo monsters, but it has you send 1 Dododo monster from your hand or face up from your field to the graveyard to draw 2 cards. It is a hard once per turn, but I still find it's definitely worth it because it's like the draw power of this deck. And Gagaga monsters, like I said, there are 13 targets for Gagaga Wind, and since we play that 1 Gagaga Child, whereas for Dododo Draw there are 12 targets of Dododo monsters, so that way you're more than likely going to see it. That's just like saying I'm going to play Allure of Darkness if I have 12 dark monsters. I think that's pretty reasonable ratio-wise, so that's why I decided to run Dododo Draw in this deck. Next up, we have some of the support that actually works with all of the monsters, and that is Automata Pickup. So what Automata Pickup does is it is a continuous spell card, and when it's activated, you can add 1 Automat card from your deck to your hand, except a copy of itself. And when it's on the field, you can target 1 Zubaba, Gagaga, Gogogo, or Dododo monster you control, and all monsters you currently control become that monster's level until the end of the turn. This is pretty good because sometimes if you're running, personally for me in this build, I'm running just a rank 4 toolbox, but because of Gagaga Magician's effect of being able to be any level 1 through 8, you can really kind of tech in whatever other Xyz levels you want. Maybe you want to run more level 6 Dododos or something of that nature, but ultimately this gets all of your monsters basically on the same page to go for whatever rank Xyz monster you want to go for. Additionally, this allows you to search another card in the deck, which is Onomatopoeia, which is a very good search card for the deck for the monsters themselves. You can only activate Onomatopoeia once per turn, but you send one card from your hand to the graveyard to add up to 2 monsters, one of each for the 4 archetypes. So basically you can search out 1 Gagaga and 1 Dododo monster. And you can't search 2 Gagaga and you can't search 2 Dododo, you can only search 1 of each of the archetypes. And since we only run Gagaga and Dododo monsters, basically this is a 2-card searcher though. It does have you discard, so it's not like it's a plus in card advantage, but any card that searches 2 cards and isn't a -1 is definitely good in my opinion. Another 3 of I run, the last 3 of I run in the deck is actually 3 Memories of Hope. I'm still testing this card, so I'm not sure if it's actually a keeper or not, but considering this new master rule will allow us to spam Xyz monsters a little more freely, Memories of Hope allows you to draw 1 card for each number Xyz monster with different names you control. So if you spam even like 2 Xyz monsters of different names that are like different number monsters, that's a draw 2 right there. This is a hard once per turn, but even still, all you need is just to have number monsters out, and this is either an upstart goblin, and anything past that, in my opinion, is quite good. And I don't know, I haven't heard many talks about this card, but in theory, and from what the limited testing I've done with this card in particular in the new master rule, I find it very successful. I also play the 1 double for nothing, of course, because we have Utopia double in the extra deck. You can't have an Onomatopoeia deck without Utopia monsters. I play 1 Monster Reborn, just for a little bit of recursion. And then another card I play, since this deck doesn't like use any graveyard resources per se, it just kind of Xyzes and then dumps all the monsters, like all the materials. I do play 1 Pot of Avarice. You might want to increase it now that the ban list has brought this to 3 copies. I still find that Pot of Avarice isn't a good starter card, of course, since it requires you to have 5 monsters in the graveyard, but ultimately it's pretty decent to kind of get your good monsters back into your deck, as well as get you some draws. That's the end of my main deck. This is definitely not built to be super competitive, and by that I mean, in theory, you would probably want to run some Called by the Graves or maybe some hand traps or something like that. But honestly, this deck is so tight at 40 cards, in my opinion, for what the deck tries to do with like the certain ratios and like all that. I find hand traps might not be the best route to go if you want to run a lot of them, but try to see what works for you if you want to test this deck out. And if you want to make it more competitive, I would just recommend work on hand traps and more board breakers and stuff of that nature. Now on to the extra deck. I play 1 Evil Swarm Exciton Knight to blow up boards, 1 Tornado Dragon to deal with back row, 1 Abyss Dweller to deal with graveyard, and also I play 1 Gagaga Cowboy. This extra deck, I noticed when constructing this, I'm kind of taking a lot of like cards from the older rank 4 toolbox now that the master rule is back to kind of what it was before. I don't know if Gagaga Cowboy is the best option for the extra deck now, but it is a Gagaga monster, and it also still, Cowboy for game is a thing, and if you're in a situation where you just need a little bit more damage, he is just as viable now as he was then. Additionally, I play the new card, Gagaga Magician, 1 more Ga in there, which made him an Xyz monster. His effect has to do with Utopic future monsters, which this extra deck that I'm showing you right now is actually 14 cards. I highly recommend getting number F0 Utopic future as well and put it in your extra deck for this deck if you want to run Gagaga Magician, because his effect works directly with that monster. Sadly, mine has not come in the mail yet, so I am not running it in this extra deck purely because I don't have the copy of it, which is why I'm just telling you guys verbally to have that in the deck and to work with this card. Or you can leave them both out. Honestly, they're not too powerful of a win condition. It basically gets you a 4K beat stick in a sense. Next up, I'm actually going to go over real quick my 2 level 10s I decided to put in this deck. One, number XX, Utopic Dark Infinity. Now he's really cool because he's a rank 10 monster and he also is a 4K beater, and he has an effect where if a monster is destroyed and sent to the graveyard, if destroyed by battle and sent to the graveyard, you can detach 1 material from him and target that monster and special summon it onto your field in defense position. And you can target 1 other face-up special summon monster you control, and you can gain life points equal to its original attack. So not only does he help you regain some life points in a pinch, since this is a more low-tier deck, life points might be an issue, but he also gets you some bodies on board, which you can mess with later on, maybe on your next turn or something. Another level 10, which is also pretty viable for me, is number 35, Ravenous Tarantula. He gains attack equals to the difference between your life points and your opponent's life points if your life points are lower. But he also has an effect where he burns your opponent for 600 every time your opponent special summons a monster. He's not the best option, but it's just another rank 10 that I've been messing with that I find to work out quite well. Another number monster I have, now we're getting into the rank 4s, is number 101, Silent Honor Arc. Honestly, I think Silent Honor Arc has gotten worse, mainly over time been power crept, mainly because of the fact that with link summoning, you kind of had to make whatever monster you special summon from the extra deck very worth it. And now that you're not restricted to a certain number of Xyz monsters based off of the link arrows you have open, I think Silent Honor Arc is worth it now in the game. Plus, it is a number monster, which helps with this deck's strategy in particular, and it's just a good removal option. Another monster we have is number 41, Bagusta, to kind of slow down the game a little bit. We have number 60, Dugaris the Timeless, which has 3 interesting effects, but the one I like the most is his battle effect. I'll just read you all of them. You can detach 2 materials from him, and he takes 2 level 4 monsters, and you activate one of the following effects. Skip your next draw phase, and then you draw 2 cards and discard 1 card. Skip your next main phase 1 and then special summon 1 monster from your graveyard in defense position, or skip the battle phase of the next turn and double the attack of 1 monster you control until the end of this turn. Dugaris' effects are so interesting to me, and they make so much sense with his lore because he's the Timeless, so basically you're sacrificing your future phase in order to make your current phase a little bit better. And his battle phase effect, where you skip your next battle phase in order to have a monster double its attack this turn, definitely is super good and definitely helps you push for game a little harder. Of course, we have the one, number 39, Utopia. And what we put on top of 39 Utopia is number 39 Utopia Double, where you can punch for 10,000 damage. Or I also play one S39 Utopia the Lightning, which punches for 5,000 damage, but your opponent can't activate any card effects when you attack. So he kind of is a safer option just in case you find you are facing an opponent that kind of leads toward more back row hate or something of that nature. And then finally, the last card in the deck, which you can use to kind of fill out your toolbox a little better, whatever you think I'm missing in terms of rank 4 monsters you find are good, is one, Bujinki Arashima. I put this in my Zodiac deck profile. I think that's going to come out before this deck profile, we'll see. But he's good in Xyz decks. Bujinki Arashima, basically when he's link summoned, which takes 2 monsters of the same level, so it's kind of the same requirements as an Xyz summon. You can select 1 monster in your hand and 1 monster in your graveyard at the same level, special summon them out onto the field, and have those 2 monsters Xyz summoned together. And also, whenever a monster is Xyz summoned, whenever a monster removes a material while he, what is it? Is it material or is it Xyz summon? Let's see. Yeah, sorry. Whenever an Xyz monster detaches a material that it's pointing to, whenever an Xyz monster that this monster points to detaches a material in order to activate its effect, you can destroy one spell or trap your opponent controls. So he not only gets you an Xyz monster out, but he also allows you to destroy some back row, which is pretty good in my opinion. I've known about this deck and this kind of strategy for years. I find Zexal to be kind of a weird part of my life because that was the anime that brought me back into Yu-Gi-Oh! Which is funny because like I always watched 5Ds, but I didn't get back into actually collecting the cards again until the Zexal anime. I know it gets some hate, but ultimately it has a soft spot in my heart. This deck is very, very interesting, and the ban list, the new Master Rule, coupled with the new support we got in the most recent Legendary Duelists, honestly makes this deck playable, and that's all I could ever ask for because it's definitely fun when it goes off. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you like deck profiles, if you like Yu-Gi-Oh!, if you like skits, sealed only, any kind of Yu-Gi-Oh! Stuff, make sure to subscribe. I'm JC Theater Yu-Gi-Oh! See ya!